Welcome to the Brain Factor Podcast with Joy and Laura, powered by Meridian Healthcare, approaching wellness with heart, one life at a time, one community at a time. This is a science-based conversation about real life. Our goal? To leave you with a few nuggets of wisdom, smile on your face, and maybe even a laugh or two. So let's jump in. Hi, welcome to the Brain Factor. I'm Joy and joined by my lovely co-host Laura, who is with me all the time. Thank you so much for joining in today. So today we wanted to talk about burnout a little bit. Burnout in, the context of work, but also in your private life outside of work, and, how that happens and how to identify that it's going on, because I think sometimes we're in that state of burnout, but we don't really recognize it. And also just take a look at some strategies that we can employ to help us with burnout.
Yeah, like prevent it in the first place.
Yeah. And it's June right now, and probably a lot of kids are going to be getting out of school pretty soon or already out wherever. So you're going to be if you're a parent, you're probably going to have a lot of extra.
There's a whole other layer
going on in the summer. So I think it's a really good time because you may be experiencing over the summer months burnout at work and at home. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or
because
both.
you've got the two full-time jobs, which equal 4 full-time jobs.
So right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you touched on something already that was super important, like the recognition that it's even burnout, because what happens when we are in full burnout is we're doing one of two things. We're either shutting down or we're spinning like a hamster on a wheel. And when we're spinning, we're not paying attention to I'm actually spinning right now, right? So you have no idea.
No.
And I heard something recently that got me fired up about this topic and really had me looking into it. And it was something somebody had said, that no one ever changed the world on a 40-hour work week. Right? I heard somebody say that. I had a visceral reaction to that. That made me angry, right? I couldn't figure out why, right? Because I was like, why am I so offended by this, right? And so I started really looking into that whole concept, this world of social change, relationship with time, entanglement with ideas around power and productivity and time spent, and how people interpret that to be productivity and that to be success, right? I'm using air quotes for people who aren't watching, right?
Sure.
And so what I found was this concept of suffer culture.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting, and so I wanted to talk about that. It's where urgency sort of creates this badge of honor about how much we're sacrificing to be productive, whether it's for the job or for the home. Right?
I'm like biting my tongue right now because I'm immediately jumping to generational.
Sure, which we've talked about. Yes,
well.
And you're so correct. That's that value system that some people have that absolutely equates time spent with effectiveness or success or even as much as you must value what you're doing, right? And it's just not always the case.
And I think that suffer culture is a little easier for us Gen Xers to accept.
Right. It is. Although I'm finding, I have family members and my own parents who are from the baby boomer generation who tends to be the generation that falls victim to this the most because of their value system shaped by what the social and socioeconomic political landscape was when they were growing up. But even now, what they're seeing is and this is anecdotal, this is not data, don't come for me, but what I am hearing from the baby boomers in my life is that they are seeing, their friends, they're losing their friends and people are dying, and what do they have to show for it?
Oh, what do they have to show for it?
And so the folks that are still around and maybe still working or maybe finally enjoying retirement are starting to realize maybe I gave too much, and so that I think that's interesting.
That is really interesting
to see that shift even in a few people, right?
It's coming full circle.
Yeah, it really, really is.
Yeah.
And you know, going back to like where does suffer culture show up? I work in mission-driven nonprofit world, and you at one time did as well.
Yeah, for
a long
20
time,
years.
you know.
Yeah.
And I think in any kind of public work, any kind of service work, and especially in those like mission-driven nonprofit worlds, right? The suffer culture is I think easier to rear its ugly head because we're fed by making a difference. So it doesn't get to be just a job, right? It's a mission. And so anytime anything's a mission, I think it becomes a little bit more like whether it's a self-expectation or an external expectation to, open a vein for the job.
Yeah.
Basically.
I think it can persist in private companies as well.
Sure.
Outside of it in the independent sector, because a lot of companies have a mission focus and they're out there like doing good for the world, even if you're like maybe building solar panels and you're really passionate and feel like that type of power energy is going to make a difference in the world, and you
could fall into that so easy.
Yeah, you're doing something where you're providing education, or the harder you work and the more you do, the more your company is able to support initiatives that you love or things like that. So I think it does reach in.
It does reach in. And what I see in the nonprofit world is that everybody's your boss because it's publicly funded.
That is
right?
facts.
Yes. So like
you walk into
they're
someone
your boss's
in Publix
boss,
and they tell you what should be going on with your company.
Yes. Yeah. So everybody's your boss. There's like a community stakeholders. There's boards of directors. Everybody's either your boss or your boss's boss. There's these limited sort of fleeting dollars. Even when it's good, it's temporary, right?
Yeah.
So the nonprofit world really fluctuates like that. There's either no raises and bonuses or they're inconsistent. It's usually lesser benefits, different expectations for time off and deadlines, right? And so in a public entity, it's urgent and important start to become the same thing, right? Like the lines blur, and I think that can happen in the corporate world too, right? Particularly when if there's like lack of like structure and direction, and if the organization is organizationally sort of sloppy at all, I think that can happen a lot. And so there's this other term when I was researching that I came across that's being written about more and more and more, and that's the tyranny of urgency.
Yeah, so I had to say when we were talking about this right before we started, I'm like, what is that?
Yeah. So like, I think that's a cool term, right? But a buzz phrase nonetheless. But it still helps describe it, right? This idea that our to-do list continues to grow and grow, like our regular work, our job, the stuff we're supposed to be doing day to day, it's not getting done. And the to-do lists grow and grow and grow and grow and grow while we are constantly busy putting out fire after fire after fire, or doing what the latest community stakeholder is asking us to do. And at the end of the day, some roundabout or direct way they pay the bills. So you got to drop everything, right? And put out that fire. And so that sort of underlying undone work is what creates that environment that so many of us, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, experience, where we know we have the vacation time, but we can't take it. Yeah. We can't even be out sick.
Yeah. And that's a lot of, while I was in nonprofits, that was a lot of the big benefit is the time off that you would accumulate.
Right.
But you would accumulate
There's a reason you were accumulating it.
And they could give it away so freely because you could never use it.
Because you're never going to use it all, right? And even managing our time under those conditions of the underlying undone work can be very, very difficult. And then you're so busy, so tired, so active, putting in all this time, and you're not actually getting work done. And that's the perfect open door for burnout.
Yeah,
right?
And I feel like it's in working in nonprofits, especially ones where you felt like you were going to save a life by doing things, you really sacrifice your own. Your self-care and your time, because it's like, but if I can just get these 18 more things done,
it'll make such a difference.
I'll make such a difference, and 300 people are going to be impacted, and maybe one of their lives will be saved. I'm going to skip the gym so I can do this.
Right.
Or I'm going to skip the lunch, and I'm just going to sit here and inhale something out of the vending machine.
Right. Or I'm not going to take that vacation that the family wants to take on spring break because that's a bad time for me in the
Because all the kids are out of school and I need to take care of them.
I need to take care of all of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Including my own.
Right. So, and I think, and when you have, a lot of folks who are working in the nonprofit world, like you have a servant heart and mind, right? And it's very, very difficult to shut that off.
Yeah.
And it really does just invite burnout, right?
Yeah.
And again, we talked like we don't know we're in burnout usually. Going back to what we talked about last month, notice if your friends are in burnout, have a conversation with them, right?
How are you doing?
Yes, I'm worried about you.
noticing X,
Yes.
Y, and Z.
Yes. But what does it look like, right? If we have any kind of, before I move into what it looks like, one of the ways we cope with burnout is we try to make it something positive. And we wear it like a trophy, like a badge of honor.
Look at me, I put in 60 hours this week.
Oh, you only put in 60? I put in 75.
Oh.
I must be better at my job and more effective, right? Like, we do that. Oh my gosh, we do that, right? I heard somebody say one time, they were joking, like, oh, you work a 40-hour. I remember my first part-time job, right?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, it's not a badge of honor to be burnt out, but we wear it as one because that's a coping strategy.
Yeah.
And I think so look for those things too. Like, what's the rhetoric around the office?
Yes, or in companies where people, nonprofit or otherwise, where people work by billable hours.
Right.
How to make your income go up.
And so I put in my job now, I put in service notes, right? And billable. And the goal is to have 120 a month, right? I'm like, I feel like extra good when I have like 150.
Yeah.
I shouldn't. No, like that means that I overworked myself, right? Like I didn't take time off. Like I didn't, but I do, you can't help it when it's as human beings, we're so competitive. And when things are measured numerically, more is better, right?
Yeah, this is so funny because going back to my own recovery from my shoulder surgery, my chiropractor had told me, she's like, okay, Joy, I know you're going to have a surgery. And I know how you are, so I want you to understand that when PT tells you to do 10 of something, 20 is not better. You need to do 10. I'm like, thank you. But I was so grateful she pointed that out because I may have done that. Oh, I could get better faster.
Right.
So you're just going to set yourself back.
Yeah, you're just going to hurt yourself. Yeah. And this stuff is the same way. You're just going to hurt yourself, right? So how do we know? Like, what are the signs of burnout? How do we know?
I probably feel a lack of engagement in what I'm doing. I know for me personally, sometimes it's like when it's my job, I might be disinterested in things that I might have been disinterested before. Maybe I could be putting in a little, I would never do this at work, putting in a little less effort.
Right.
The
disinterest is a big one for me because there's things about the work that I do that I love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's like certain classes that I love teaching. Yeah. I enjoy it. Yeah. And I know when I'm like, oh, I got to go teach that today.
But you usually get energized by those.
Right.
And now you're not energized.
That's a red flag for me when I'm like, I don't want to go teach that
class.
Right. I'm like, ooh, who said that?
Yeah.
Because she needs a vacation. Right. Yeah. And then you said lack of effort. That's another one.
Lack of effort. And you can also start physically feeling different. Like I know a measure for me when I'm overstressed or burnt out or overworked or something, I don't drink enough water.
Oh,
it's literally an indicator for me that something's going wrong is I'm like, I haven't had a sip of water in like 6 hours.
Yeah.
When I try to drink between a half a gallon to a gallon a day. And it's just because I'm so down and focused and working on it. Or some people start like feeling sick. You ever hear people say, you have a headache, or it's like, oh, I'm just really exhausted. I'm not feeling that great. I've been working a lot, overtime, extra hours. I'm on this big project and I'm kind of stressed out and like, oh, my throat hurts
or gastrointestinal problems, or back aches or shoulder. We carry our stress sometimes in our back and shoulders and neck.
And that's really important that you just pointed out was gut health.
Yeah.
And that's a huge indicator, and your gut is so important.
Yep.
So you need to listen to it.
Yeah, you do. Yes. So those physical symptoms, they will tell you stuff, right? For sure. And so, being tired is one thing, right? And then your productivity, right, is going to suffer. And then you feel like you're working so hard, you're spinning out of control, you're putting out all these fires, but you're not getting your work done, you're losing your effort, you're losing your passion, and then you start to look lazy and ineffective.
Right. Yeah.
And all you're doing is
not
working.
What you want, because you're a top performer, overachiever.
Right. So, but it really does start to look like you're just not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that's how we really see burnout show up, right? But here's the reality of the pressure that we put ourselves under, and this is something I really want.
That's a great point. We are putting ourselves under this pressure sometimes.
Because here's the thing, right? Burnout can occur internally and externally, and that's the hard truth that we really do have to accept, right? Yeah. We can put the pressure on ourselves, and then also like internal burnout shows up, and this I don't think anybody talks about enough. Is like, what if I do take the vacation, but all I'm thinking about is work? Yeah. I'm still working. I'm still working, right? So like you got to figure out how to do it internally as well, right? And so, but the reality is like you have the right to exist if you are not overworking. You can put yourself and your family and like your personal priorities squarely first. You absolutely can, and still be an absolute rock star employee anywhere. Like that is a real thing, no matter what the suffer culture is telling you. And you can kill it at your job in 40 hours a week. You can do that. That is possible to do, right? Yeah. And you can have passion and love and dedication for a mission and still not want to die for the job. Yeah. Like you really can, and that whole list, that was for my baby boomers out there. I promise you can get it done in 40 hours. You can be effective, and it doesn't mean that you're lazy, right? So
if you track those types of things too, what you get in 40 hours, and then you track the other things, that gives you some data and metrics to be able to have a conversation with your employer about as well. Like, it's a way to advocate for more employees and
absolutely
all kinds of different things.
Absolutely. One of the things I was working with a company, I was providing some workforce development training, and we were talking about resources that were available, and their company had tons and tons of resources, and no one had the time to take advantage of any of them.
A gym on site,
and
nobody ever.
No one can be in there unless it's after hours, right? Like it's not, you don't have the time to be able to use the resources. So it looked great on paper, but no one was really helping any of the employees. And that was something we really had to look at.
A whole wonderful wellness program, and nobody's using it.
Yeah. So that's a difficult thing, and I think, but I do think it's not all doom and gloom, right? Like we can recognize burnout. We can take some steps to try to, there's really no other, I don't want to say absolutes, but there's not a whole lot of other effective answers besides it's time to take some time off. Yeah. Truly. Like you have to reset mentally, emotionally, physically when we get to that point. Not getting to that point in the first place is probably the most effective thing. Yeah.
And that's building in self-care and
absolutely building in self-care. There's a couple of like work habits that you can do too, though, that I think are helpful. Prioritizing is one of them, and that's not just like, I have to get. So you turned me on to a number of years ago. I always had trouble keeping a planner. Like I'm one of those people that like buys it and gets all the markers, and then like by March it's gone. Right? But you had on your desk when we worked together at Meridian, you had this pad that was a calendar. Yeah. And so when that week or those 2 weeks were done, it was gone. Right? You rip it off, you throw it away, right? Yeah. And I was like, whoa. So my mind was blown. So I started looking into I used that exact one for a while. Yeah. Right? And then I found this one that was, it's on Amazon, it has like little cats on it. And it's got 3 categories. And it says things that absolutely must get done today. Yeah. And then the second category is, and if that all goes well, I might also get these things done. Right. And then if the stars align and I'm a complete rock star, these things will also get done. Yeah. And for me to be able to take those priorities and put them into 3 subcategories has been so effective for me.
I did something a little bit different than that, but like that with my team recently. We now have a priority system. So it's like 5 or 6 categories, and there's priority 1, and they are specific drivers of something. And then in priority 2, they're like supports of those specific like revenue drivers. And then a priority 3 is a support to that. And it goes down. So we get so much coming in and coming at us. There's more than we can ever do. So now everybody is able to take it and look at their, list. And go,
what
okay,
category is this in?
Yeah. So we put it into the workflow as a priority 1 or a priority 2 or a 3.
Yep. And I love that. That's a really good system. And there are so many competing priorities that that's what helps. That helps.
Oh, it helps too. And as I'm speaking as like the one being in charge of it, but what it's done too is helped empower my team to be able to say stuff, because they're like, oh, this is category. I know you need this right now, but this is only a 5 in our priorities.
And I have 2s and 1s. Yeah.
We have all these other ones, but if you want to try it, you can talk to Joy about it.
Right. And I imagine too, like even in the rare cases, they might have to tell you. Right. It gives them the verbiage to be like, Joy, that's a 3. Yeah. Like I really don't have time for that. I have too many 1s, like, and so I think that's a really good system to put in place, because that allows. It does
empower them to be able to say, okay, this is a 3, so we're going to get it in. We'll probably get it to it in X amount of time. We still don't just go, no, forget it. It's in terminal death.
Right. And another thing I like about that system is that, we tend to, I know one of the like coping strategies for burnout is the low hanging fruit. You go for the easy, quick stuff. Yeah. Right. Because now I feel like I accomplished something. Well, what if those were all 4s?
Yeah. Right.
Right. Like no, they need to wait a week. Yeah. Because even though this one is not low hanging fruit, it's more of a priority, and that's where I need to put all of my focus. Right. So I think it helps us with prioritizing and time management and stuff.
Yeah. We don't have to think about it all, because there's a whole list of things under priority 1. If it's this, if it's this type of thing. So it's easy to go, okay, and sometimes things are blurry, where does it go? Okay, it goes here. Okay, I can do this and move on.
Yeah. I think for me, there's only really 2 other things besides like prioritizing, block scheduling, that sort of anything that's like that real functional stuff. But protective patterns are really important for me. And what that means is like, I'm taking my lunch.
Right.
Even if I know that like I could knock this out if I didn't, or I'm taking that 10-minute break, even though I don't feel like I need it today. Yeah. I'm making sure that I'm proactively keeping those patterns that are self-care. And then, we've had a whole episode previously on boundaries. That's a very important thing as well, is to really know where they are. And that goes into those protective patterns too. And hold your own boundaries. Yeah. Right? You can't expect other people to hold your boundaries if number 1, you don't know what they are, and number 2, you haven't communicated them, and number 3, you're not holding them yourself. Right? So I think those are things that we have that are well within our own control to do, right? Is to map out our priorities and things like that, map out our scheduling, make sure we have systems that work, and then keep those protective patterns that are tied to our boundaries so that we stay, healthy and functional and effective without spinning out of control. I think those are the important things. Yeah. So let us know how you deal with burnout. How do you prevent it? What do you do when you feel it come on? And let us know some best practices and tips and tricks. So
see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brain Factor. Joy and I are so thrilled to be having these needed conversations. We'd love to hear your feedback on this episode, so if you could drop a comment or leave a review with your thoughts or any requests that you may have, it would be appreciated. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Living a healthier and happier life starts with one step, and we're excited to be on this journey with you. Until next time.